The adventurous story begins with a girl named Alice, who is seen having a very strange dream. When Alice's father comes to her, she starts telling him about her dream. Alice says that she repeatedly sees hummingbirds in her dreams, and a rabbit wearing a coat was talking to her. On the other side, a cat was smiling. But when Alice's father heard about these dreams, he began thinking that it couldn't be possible, it must be Alice's imagination creating these images. That's why her father didn't pay much attention to it. Alice felt a bit disappointed because she kept having the same kind of dreams over and over, and no one was willing to believe her. And so, 10 years passed like this. Alice had grown up to be quite beautiful, but her father had passed away. Only some relatives were alive who took care of her. One day, Alice's aunt was taking her to a grand party organized by the king. Alice had no idea about it, she was simply accompanying her aunt. However, the dreams she used to see as a child still continued. She had seen nothing else in her sleep except those dreams. It was very strange, but Alice kept all of this to herself. When they arrived at the party, everyone seemed very happy to see Alice, but she had no clue what was going on. After a while, she was told that she was going to be engaged to the king's son, because he had seen her and liked her. The prince's name was Heman, but Alice did not like him. However, since so many people were present, she felt she had to do something. Heman approached Alice and kept asking for her hand so he could put a ring on her finger and make her his. Alice didn't know what to do in this situation. Just then, she heard some rustling from the bushes. When she looked closely, she saw a rabbit wearing a coat, exactly the same one she had seen in her dreams. Alice couldn't hold back and immediately ran after the rabbit. The rabbit ran into the forest and disappeared into a cave. Alice followed, covering the distance quickly, but she couldn't see anything inside the cave. As she tried to get comfortable, suddenly her hand slipped, and she began falling into the cave without any support. The cave was very deep, and no one knew where it ended. Obviously, Alice got trapped inside. She kept falling from a great height, then suddenly began to slow down and eventually stopped at a landing point. Amazingly, she didn't seem to be badly hurt. But she began looking around to find a way out of that place. The chamber she was in had many doors. Alice tried to open all of them, but they seemed to be locked. Then, as she looked around, she noticed a key placed on a table. She thought maybe this key could open one of the doors, so without wasting any time, she picked it up and started trying the doors one by one. Unfortunately, none of them opened. Only one door was left, it was much smaller than the others. When Alice used the key on that tiny door, fortunately, it opened. There was indeed a path to the other side, but it was extremely small. Alice couldn't possibly fit through it, no matter how hard she tried. So, she closed the little door and, frustrated, placed the key back on the table. Just then, she noticed a bottle beside her with a label that read, "Drink me." Alice thought for a moment, but the very next moment, she drank the liquid. Within a few seconds, her body began to shrink, and she turned into a tiny, mini-sized version of herself. At that point, Alice realized that the liquid must have the power to shrink whoever drank it. Now she could easily pass through the small door. But there was a problem. After locking the door earlier, she had put the key back on the table. Since she had now shrunk, she could no longer reach the table to get the key. How would she get the key and open the door? After a lot of trying, Alice sat down near the ground and noticed a piece of cake with a label clearly saying, "Eat me." This time, she didn't hesitate, she ate the piece of cake. Suddenly, her size began increasing rapidly, and she turned into a giant. Now things started making sense to Alice. So after growing in size, she picked up the key from the table. Then, she drank the shrinking liquid again and became tiny, this time with the key in her hand. Alice went straight to the small door, opened it, and passed through to the other side. She was completely fascinated, because this was a whole different world, unlike anything on Earth. In front of her, she saw many strange creatures, and among them was the rabbit in the coat and pants. Alice slowly started walking toward them. And Alice kept thinking that maybe this was all just a dream. The rabbit began telling his friends, "This is Alice, the one we've been looking for." But the other animals looked at Alice and said, "Maybe you've brought the wrong person. She doesn't seem to have any ability to solve the problems we're facing." Alice had no idea what they were talking about. After a while, they all took Alice to a caterpillar named Absalom. Absalom began explaining to her that she was their protector. He even showed her a magical calendar that revealed the beginning and end of their world, how it started and how it would eventually end. There was a prophecy written in it that said, on a very special day, Alice would come into their world and kill a dangerous demon named Wocky Jabber, who had the power to fly, using a unique sword. But this sword was not ordinary, it was in the possession of a woman called the Red Queen, who ruled over the kingdom using Wocky Jabber's terrifying powers. The Red Queen was arrogant and ruthless, and no one in the kingdom liked her. Yet she was willing to do anything to hold on to her power. Hearing all this, Alice became a little scared. She said, "I'm not the one you all think I am." But just then, a huge creature appeared in front of them. It looked like a hybrid of different animals, something Alice had never seen before. Still, Alice kept thinking this was just a dream, and since it was her dream, no one could harm her. So, she wasn't afraid at all. Suddenly, a tiny mouse jumped onto the giant beast and stabbed it in the eye with a sharp weapon. This created the perfect opportunity. Alice, along with the others, escaped to the other side of the forest. That giant creature was actually Stain, the husband of the Red Queen. When Stain arrived at the spot with his guards, he saw the magical calendar. It clearly mentioned that Alice would one day kill him using the special sword. Reading this, Stain became extremely alert and immediately informed the Red Queen. Now the Red Queen began to panic a little. Her reign of terror depended on the fear caused by Wocky Jabber. If Stain died, how would she continue to rule by fear? So, she ordered her soldiers, "Find the girl named Alice and bring her to me as soon as possible." A dog was sent on this mission. His family was being held captive by the Red Queen, so he had no choice but to obey. And so, the dog set out on his journey. Deep inside the forest, a search party had been sent to find Alice. Meanwhile, we see Alice slowly making her way through the dense forest when suddenly, she comes across a smiling cat, the same one she used to see in her dreams. The cat leads Alice to a giant named Hatter. As soon as Hatter sees Alice, he's shocked and says, "Yes, it's you. You are Alice. You're the one who will fix everything." Alice doesn't understand anything, which is why Hatter, being so big, lifts her up and places her on his head. He starts carrying her toward the other side of the forest, as the forest becomes extremely dangerous at night. On the way, Hatter explains everything to Alice. He tells her that according to the prophecy, she will save everyone and destroy the fearsome creature. Alice asks, "But how did all this begin?" Hatter calmly explains. Many years ago, when the White Queen was the princess of this land, there was peace everywhere. Everyone lived happily and enjoyed their lives. But one day, a massive creature named Wocky Jabber appeared. This flying demon used the fire from its mouth to burn down entire forests, and countless innocent animals lost their lives. The only way to kill Wocky Jabber was with a special sword. But that sword was taken by Stain, the husband of the Red Queen. Using the sword's power, Stain helped the Red Queen seize control of the entire kingdom. Ever since the Red Queen and her terrifying beast took over, all of Wonderland's peace was shattered, and the land became cursed. As Hatter was explaining all this to Alice while carrying her forward, he suddenly realized that the dog and many other creatures had tracked them down and were coming to capture Alice. So, Hatter ran as fast as he could, with Alice still on top of his head. Soon, they reached a river, and Hatter couldn't cross it. So, he placed Alice on his hat and said, "Head north, you must find the White Queen no matter what." Then, Hatter threw his hat with Alice on it across the river to keep her safe. Within moments, many of the Red Queen's soldiers arrived and captured Hatter. They asked him repeatedly about Alice's whereabouts, but Hatter refused to say a word. On the other side, Alice didn't know what to do in this situation. Since it was already quite late, she decided to spend the night hiding inside Hatter's hat. In the morning, the same rabbit came to Alice. The rabbit told her that they should head towards the White Queen. But Alice couldn't just let the Hatter die like that. She insisted, saying they must rescue the Hatter no matter what. So instead of going to the White Queen, Alice decided to go straight to the Red Queen, because the Hatter was being held captive in her castle. The rabbit agreed with Alice and took her directly to the Red Queen's fortress. When Alice arrived there, she noticed that the Red Queen was cruelly treating many animals. Alice didn't like this at all. Suddenly, the rabbit came to Alice and gave her a piece of cake, telling her that eating it would make her grow in size. Alice followed his instructions and quickly transformed into a giant. The Red Queen noticed Alice, but didn't recognize who she was. She simply asked, "Who are you?" Alice responded that her size had increased and, because of her strange appearance, the people of her kingdom had exiled her. Everyone hated her, and so she had come to seek help from the Red Queen. The Red Queen was pleased to see her and welcomed Alice into her castle. She allowed her to stay, mostly because Alice, like her, had an unusually large body. The Red Queen was aware that, although people feared her, many secretly mocked her large head. She assumed that Alice had faced the same ridicule, so she felt a sense of connection and let Alice stay. She even gave her clothes and had her sit by her side. A little while later, the Hatter was summoned into the castle. He was interrogated about whether he had seen Alice, but the Hatter kept denying any knowledge. He tried to mislead the Red Queen, claiming he would make a hat that would make her large head look normal and not noticeable. The Red Queen was a bit pleased and gave him permission to make the hat. Soon, while the Hatter was in his room, Alice went to him. He was extremely frustrated because if he didn't make the hat, the Red Queen might have him killed. But Alice reassured him that no matter what, they would both escape safely. The Hatter told the Red Queen that the only way to kill the giant dragon was with the royal sword that she had hidden somewhere inside the castle. He advised her to ask the rabbit, who could tell her the exact location of the sword. The Red Queen then immediately went to the rabbit and demanded the sword's location. The rabbit immediately took Alice to show her the location of the sword, and it turned out the sword was inside the room of a huge beast, the same beast that had attacked Alice earlier. That little mouse who had gouged out the beast's eyes was also there. Alice took the beast's eyes and slowly began to investigate inside. The dangerous beast was still asleep, so Alice had a good opportunity. She looked inside a chest that was there, but it wouldn't open. The key was nowhere to be found, and she failed to open it. During this, Alice got slightly scratched by the beast's claw and fainted. In the morning, when Alice woke up, the beast was in front of her. But Alice treated him kindly and returned one of his eyes. Because of this, the beast didn't harm her. Then Alice noticed that the key was hanging around the beast's neck. She quietly took the key, unlocked the chest, and took possession of the sword inside. Alice then traveled straight to the Hatter's room to unlock his chains. But just then, Stan entered with all his soldiers. Stan still didn't realize that the girl was Alice. He simply assumed she was an intruder trying to rescue the Hatter. The Hatter started telling Alice that she had to get out of there. That little mouse shouted, "Alice, run!" Which finally made Stan realize that this girl was none other than Alice herself. The Hatter tried his best to protect Alice from Stan. Alice managed to escape the castle, but Stan and his army, along with several creatures, surrounded her outside. Alice didn't know what to do in such a situation. But suddenly, the same beast arrived, the one who had perhaps now become Alice's ally. The beast lifted Alice onto its back and carried her to safety. Alice traveled all the way to the White Queen's castle and returned the sword to her. She told the White Queen, "This belongs to you. Use it to defeat the Red Queen and save all of my friends." The White Queen understood, but before anything else, she gave Alice a special liquid that returned her to her normal size. Meanwhile, in the Red Queen's castle, the Hatter was still imprisoned, and it was planned that he would be executed the next day in front of everyone. He was going crazy just thinking about it. Just then, that same smiling magical cat appeared inside the jail, the one who used to talk to Alice. The magical cat told the Hatter, "Tomorrow, I'll try on your hat," giving him a subtle hint that she had a plan to help him escape. Now, the time had come for the Hatter's execution. Everyone was gathered and watching. The Hatter was quickly laid down, and a sharp weapon was brought out to cut his throat. But suddenly, his hat flew up into the air, and his entire body disappeared. In reality, the Hatter had never been there at all. It was the magical cat who had taken his form. The real Hatter was hiding behind the Red Queen's throne. He began revealing the truth to her, that her own people were betraying her. Many of her soldiers pretended to be ugly on purpose, just because the Red Queen herself was unattractive and couldn't stand to see others looking better than her. When the Red Queen found out, she became furious with her people. Then, the Hatter stepped forward and started rallying everyone against the Red Queen. He said, "We don't need to be afraid of her. If we unite, we can defeat her." Many began to agree with him and appeared ready to join his cause. The Red Queen turned to her husband, Stan, and said that the people were getting out of control. It was time to awaken Jabberwocky, the giant dragon, so it could scare everyone back into submission and help them regain power. Meanwhile, Alice was with the White Queen and asked her, "If you're so powerful, why can't you kill the dragon yourself?" The White Queen replied, "I made a vow never to harm or kill any creature, no matter how evil it is, and I don't want to communicate with my sister either." Here, it's revealed that the Red Queen and the White Queen are actually sisters. Soon after, the White Queen looked through a telescope and saw someone entering her territory. It turned out to be the Hatter and many of his supporters, ready to stand against the Red Queen. That loyal dog was with them too, bringing his entire family, whom he reunited with after a long time. It seemed he would stand with Alice in the upcoming battle. Everyone gathered at the White Queen's castle, and they started planning how to defeat the Red Queen and the giant dragon. Many said, "We have the sword, we can use it to easily kill the dragon." But the rabbit then pulled out a magical calendar, which clearly stated that only Alice could use the sword to kill the dragon. If anyone else tried, they would die in the attempt. Alice became very confused. She was scared, this task was so important, and even one mistake could cost many lives. The White Queen and everyone else told Alice, "It's your decision." Alice didn't say anything. She simply walked away. In truth, Alice was unsure whether everything she was experiencing was real, or just a dream. From the beginning, she had believed all of this to be just a fantasy. Just then, the same caterpillar, Absalom, appeared in front of Alice. Absalom explained everything, how she had already been to Wonderland as a child, and that was why she kept having those dreams every night. They were actually memories of her time in Wonderland. She had spent many days there and formed deep bonds with the creatures, which is why every living being in Wonderland knew her. Slowly, Alice began to understand it all. She accepted that what she had experienced was real, and now she realized how important it was to protect this world. After making her decision, Alice declared, "I'm ready to fight that terrifying dragon." She put on her battle suit, took up the sword, and seeing her confidence, the White Queen and her entire army began to feel stronger. Soon, the scene shifted to a battlefield, where the armies of the White Queen and Red Queen stood face to face, ready to clash. Once again, the White Queen approached her sister, the Red Queen, and tried to reason with her. She said, "This fight will lead to nothing. You can't even imagine how many lives will be lost. We should live together in peace." But the Red Queen wouldn't listen to anyone. She ordered her soldiers to attack. At the same time, with the help of her husband Stan, the Red Queen awakened the dragon that had been sleeping beneath the ground for years. The terrifying dragon named Jabberwocky had now returned, and flew straight into battle to attack everyone. The White Queen's army also surged forward, determined to defeat their enemies and bring peace to the kingdom. Standing before the mighty dragon was Alice, who attacked it with her sword. But the dragon was so massive and fierce that she couldn't do much at first. Chaos erupted on the battlefield, with everyone trying to destroy one another. The deadly dragon launched multiple attacks at Alice. She kept blocking them and kept reminding herself that all of this was real, even though it once seemed like a dream. Because of that, she believed she was incredibly powerful here, and no one could defeat her. After struggling for a while, Alice came up with a solid plan to take the dragon down. She led it to the top of a crumbling castle tower. The structure was already starting to collapse, and one wrong move could mean her death, but Alice moved with cleverness and precision. She lured the dragon to the very top of the castle. The sword she held was filled with unlimited energy. Using its power, she first weakened the dragon significantly. After putting in an enormous amount of effort, the dragon's stamina was completely drained. Alice didn't waste any time and, using the sword, she immediately decapitated the dragon. Its head fell in front of the entire army, and upon seeing this, the Red Queen's soldiers dropped their weapons. The entire army had been working for the Red Queen out of fear of the dragon, but now that the dragon was dead, they saw no reason to continue serving her. As predicted by the magical calendar, it was Alice who would slay the dragon. The events had unfolded exactly as it had been written for that day, and Alice, with great courage, had ended the dragon's reign of terror. The people of the kingdom then declared the White Queen their rightful ruler, and she was now in full control of the kingdom. She ordered that both the Red Queen and Stan be imprisoned and banished from the kingdom forever. They would no longer have any place there. All the creatures in the kingdom rejoiced and began celebrating. Now, Alice's task was complete. The White Queen approached her and said, "You have two options. You can stay here forever and help us build Wonderland, or you can return to your own world." The White Queen gave Alice a potion that would transport her back to her world if she chose to drink it. Hatter, feeling emotional, approached Alice and told her, "I like you. Please don't leave me." But Alice explained to him that this was not her real world. However, she promised that she would return whenever needed to visit them. Alice made her decision, drank the potion, and was teleported back to her world. Although months had passed in Wonderland, only a few minutes had gone by in her world. She was still engaged to the prince's son, but Alice rejected the engagement, telling her aunt that she would find her own path in life. Afterward, Alice traveled with her uncle, advising him on business strategies her father had taught her. She suggested they travel by sea to China to bring goods and sell them at good prices, which her uncle liked. He immediately began implementing her plan. Alice then set off towards China for business, feeling quite happy. As she traveled, a butterfly landed on her shoulder. Alice recognized it immediately. It was Absalom, who had transformed into a butterfly after emerging from his cocoon. And with that, the story came to a close.